ahead and start this. Alright, so you guys should have black paper based on the orientation of your project. So if your project is vertical, you should have a piece of the black vertical paper. And if your project is horizontal, then you should have horizontal paper. So I'm actually going to demo on both, so that way you guys can see this. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and you're going to do the same step on either the vertical or horizontal paper. But essentially, what you're going to have when you're finished with this is you're going to have your project basically glued down so that you have an inch here at the top, an inch at the two sides, and then you'll notice that you'll have a lot of extra paper here at the bottom. Now, if you have a horizontal project, okay, it's going to be the same thing, except your project's going to be wide and your black paper is going to be wide. So you're going to have an inch at the top, an inch at the two sides, and you're going to have a lot of extra paper at the bottom. There's a reason for that, and you'll see that here soon, okay? So the first thing I want you guys to do is I want you to grab your ruler, okay? And you need a pencil to mark. Now, I'm going to be using a white colored pencil just so that way it shows up on the video. If I do this in pencil, you won't see it on the video. So you'll need a pencil. Now, I do want to go over, a lot of you guys have two different kinds of rulers. So some of you guys have the clear acrylic ruler. And if you have a clear acrylic ruler, it's kind of hard to see. You will notice that the measurements do not start at the very end of the ruler. So you need to make sure that you're using it correctly, okay? The measurements start where it says 0. But if you have a metal ruler, the measurements do start at the end of the ruler. So this is an important observation that you need to make, okay? I'm going to be using the metal ruler just because, again, it's easier to view on the video than this clear one, okay? So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my ruler like this on my paper, and again, this is going to be the same thing for regardless if you have the horizontal paper or the vertical. And you are going to measure 1 inch from the top of your paper, and you're going to make a mark. And I'm going to make a mark just like this on my paper, okay? An inch from the top. And I'll do this again since I'm actually demonstrating both orientations. So you'll get to see this again. And then I'm going to put my ruler now to the side, and I'm going to mark and measure 1 inch off of the left side now. And again, I'm going to make my mark kind of like this, nice and tall, so that way it helps me to kind of align my paper. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here on the right side. I'm going to measure, and it doesn't matter if it's lined up with the other mark or not. I'm going to measure 1 inch off the very right side of my paper. And again, I'm going to make a nice tall mark like this. Okay? Now again, I'm doing mine in white color pencil, so that way you guys can see it on the video. You guys should be doing this in pencil. Just because you don't want white charcoal kind of peeking through on your paper. Okay? So I'm going to do this again, but this time I'm going to do it on the vertical paper so you can see it again. It's the same concept. You're going to measure 1 inch from the very top. You're going to measure 1 inch from the left. And I'm going to measure 1 inch from the right side. That basically shows me where I need to put my paper, okay? So I'm going to give you guys a minute to get those measurements down. We're just going to walk around and make sure everybody's got it right, and then I'll show you the next step. All right, next step for this is to actually glue down your project, okay? Now, I'm going to be using a blank piece of paper for my demo just because I don't have a drawing, but this is the same size as your drawing, so the same size paper, okay? So what you're going to do, go ahead everybody and flip your drawing to the back. So you want to look at the back side of your drawing, so flip it over. And now we're going to use the rubber cement, okay? if you've never used rubber cement before, I'm going to give you a little intro for this, okay? Rubber cement is not a water-based glue, so that way it's nice. If you were to use like an Elmer's glue to attach these two papers together, a lot of times what happens is Elmer glue soaks through the paper, and it causes it to kind of buckle and crinkle. And Elmer's glue is actually a permanent glue also too, so you would never be able to remove it back off. Rubber cement is not it's not a permanent adhesive unless of course you put too much of it on. You will not get it to come off. But if you ever want to replace the black paper or just take your project off the black paper, it kind of peels off like a sticker if you do this the right way, okay? The other thing that's nice about rubber cement is that it's not going to soak through your paper, okay? So, what you're going to do, and I'm going to show you, and I would watch this first before you do it, so don't do it right now. So you're going to open this up and you're going to get, there's a brush application on this. I take off most of the rubber cement off the brush, okay? And then what you're going to do, I take this, and I just really want to focus it on the outside edges of the paper. So I'm just going to kind of frame out the corners. And then I might have to dip back in and get some more glue. And then from the corner, I kind of do this line that goes towards the middle. So it almost looks like an arrow in each one of the corners. And so I'll do that for each one of them. And again, I would watch this. Don't do it yet. So I'm just going to frame out those corners, make my little arrow, and the arrow, that line that I take from the corner into the middle of the paper helps kind of glue down this section. And then what I do sort of at the end is I just take one more sort of brush load, I guess, of glue, and I might just kind of do little kind of marks of glue just in some of the areas that might not have any. But you do not want a ton of glue on the back of this, because if you do, then it's just going to make things harder on you. So once you get that done, then you're going to flip it over and you're going to use those marks that you made, and you are going to sort of align your project to those marks. And if you notice, I haven't smashed anything down with my hands yet. The rubber cement, because it doesn't glue right away, it allows you to kind of adjust it. So I can move this kind of over a little bit and just make sure that it's all in the right spot before I kind of push it down. So that looks good. And then what I'll do is kind of use my hands and just push this down. Now, because you guys used coffee on the paper, it's quite buckled. It's not real flat. After you're done doing this step, you want to put your books on top of your project so that the books weigh down the paper and it's laying as flat as possible on there. Okay? So now you guys can go ahead and start gluing. Okay, so for the next step, while your project is sort of drying, the glue's drying, you've got your books on top of it, we're going to fill out the label, okay? I'm going to zoom into this a little bit so it's easier for those of you to see in the back. Actually, I'm going to turn my paper over. Black there. That's better. Okay, so you should have a label and you should have an ultra-fine Sharpie, okay? Now, I'll be honest with you that I've got some kids who, when they fill these out, they actually like to fill them out in pencil first and then they'll go back over it with Sharpie. So if you want to do that, that's fine. One of the things you need to understand when you're in an art class is that it's all about presentation. So, for whatever reason, and I don't know why, some people think that if you're in art class, that means that you're given permission to be sloppy or messy. It's not that way at all. Artists are very professional, okay? So, you want to make sure that when you fill out this label that you are using your best handwriting, okay? So, for those of you that have sloppy handwriting, you need to up your game here for this label, okay? Take your time and do a nice job. Everything also, too, needs to be properly capitalized and spelled on here. Anything that's sloppy, not capitalized correctly, spelled incorrectly will be marked off, okay? So everything that you're doing up to this point is part of your project grade. So presentation is worth 20% of it, all right? So, artist, that is your name, okay? So you need to write your first and last name, and again, make sure that you properly capitalize it. I'm going to go ahead and write my name on here. Again, make sure you're using nice handwriting. Next step is media, okay? Now, even though we use Sharpies on this project, I am not going to write down the word Sharpie because it's actually a brand name. So I'm going to use the word marker instead. And then I am going to write down coffee because that was part of our project also too. I don't write down the pencil just because it's been covered up and it's not evident anymore. So I would watch how I write this first and then you guys can copy. So I'm just going to go ahead and write marker. And I'm going to use the and symbol and coffee, just like that. Okay, so the next item on here is title. I'm going to skip title, okay, because that's something that takes a bit of thought and we're going to talk about a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in class. Now, you need to make sure that you write the correct class name on here. Now, drawing and painting 1 is kind of long, so if you do run out of room, you can put your class period down here below there. And it is important for you to put the class period on there because there are 3 other drawing and painting 1 classes, okay? So, again, I would watch how I write this down and then you can copy afterwards. It is the name of a class, so need to properly capitalize it. Yep, I'm going to run out of room. I always run out of room on this. So drawing and painting 1, we're going to use the Roman numeral 1, and then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put the class period down here. Now, I'm not going to write a class period in here because other classes will be watching this video and I don't want them to get confused. So you're going to write your class period number right there. So if your first period, you're going to write period 1. If your second period, you're going to write period 2, so on and so forth, okay? So let me raise this up a little bit higher so you guys can see that. So you can go ahead and write the class name on there. The title of the project, okay? So this is something that takes some thought. When you're trying to come up with a title for the project, this is just like coming up with a title of a story, the name of a song, name of a book. This is what you're basically doing. The title needs to relate to the project. So you're not going to call your drawing of bikes Bunny Rabbits and Cotton Candy because it doesn't have anything to do with bunny rabbits and cotton candy, okay? So the title does need to connect to the piece. Now, does it have to have the word bike in it or drawing? Absolutely not, okay? So I'm going to use the title I did for yesterday, and you're not allowed to copy this title. You need to, again, make sure that you properly capitalize the title. Now, I put my childhood because when I look at tricycles, it reminds me of when I was a little kid, okay? So, that's going to be my title. Think about it. If you don't have one right off the top of your head right now, you can leave this blank. You technically have until Friday to turn in the project, so you could sit on this and think about your title, all the way up through tomorrow, okay? So I'm going to give you guys like a minute or two to think about the title, and if you've got one, go ahead and write it down. If not, you can put it in tomorrow, but then I'll show you the next step here in a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and move on. So now that you have your label finished, and again, if you've left your title blank, that's fine. You can do that later, okay? We're going to, if you guys, and I'm going to lift this up. Sorry about this. So I've got my project, back out here. Got my project, my blank piece of paper, glued down on the black paper, and I've got all this extra room down here at the bottom, okay? So this is where your label's going to go. That's why we left all of that extra paper down there at the bottom. The label's going to go in the center. We're not going to measure the paper out. You can just kind of eye it in the middle, okay? And you want to have a little space in between the artwork and the label. So we don't want to put the label on top of the artwork like this, and we don't want the label to be under the artwork. We just want it a little bit of space between the two, okay? And then that leaves you about 1 inch at the bottom of your paper, okay? So once you figure out where it needs to go, then you're ready to actually glue this on here. So I'm going to turn this around. And again, you don't need a lot of rubber cement. Once you got the glue on there, turn it around. Kind of eye this in the middle. Just a little bit of space between the two so you see a little bit of black above that. And again, move it around until it's nice and straight in the center. And then when you're settled on where it needs to go, go ahead and press it down, okay? And it's going to look like that. All right, the last, well, and I'll give you guys a minute to do that, and then I'll show you the last step. All right, the last step for you guys is to actually sign your artwork with your signature, okay? Now, do not do it right now. I need you guys to listen first, okay? So when you sign your artwork, here are some of the problems that I see with signatures. Is one, kids make them too big, and they make them too loud. And this is going to sound harsh, okay? But when you add your signature to your artwork, you need to remember that it's about the artwork, not about you, okay? So it's about the artwork. The artwork has to be the star of the show. But if you go in and you add your signature and it's huge and it's really thick and it's loud, it's going to take away from 3 weeks worth of work that you've put into that project, okay? So when you sign your work, you want to do it in the lower right-hand corner, and you want to make it really small and very quiet. Now, here are some suggestions. You do not have to write your full name if you don't want to, okay? You can use just your initials if you want to. Or, if you want, like sometimes I just sign with my last name, Gower, okay? You can do that. Or you can do it just with your first name if you want to. There's really a lot of options. You can also print it, or if you want to write it in cursive, you can write it in cursive. But the signature is really important because, one, it copyrights your work, okay? This is a form of copywriting, okay? So I'm going to show you guys an example here. Here's this project that I've had up on the board, okay? The black paper's been trimmed, so it's not like yours. But if you guys look down here, you can see the signature. Nice and small, down here in the corner, and does not take away from everything that's going on here, okay? You are going to use the Sharpie marker, the thin one especially, so you're going to use the small Sharpie marker, and you can sign it down in that lower right-hand corner. This step right here, guys, is actually worth 4 percentage points on your project grade, okay? You get 2 percentage points for just doing it, and you get 2 percentage points for doing it correctly, all right? So take the time to do it well. Now, if you do have part of your drawing down here in this corner, you can kind of put your signature inside the drawing if you want to, all right? So if you have any questions about that, just let me know. But you can go ahead and do that. And then the rest of the class period is for you guys to work on your project, okay?